Oh my god. Okay. So, oh my god, my hair. It's kind of serving up a little bit of a oh my god, how do we get this thing to be sort of somewhat serviceable? It's not gonna happen, is it? Mm, all right. There. Is that gonna get it done? You know, I'm kinda thinking about Miley Cyrus' hair at the Grammys and how, this might kinda like this gets a little bit of a serve on that. And, also, like, one of the things that comes up in thinking about Miley Cyrus at the Grammys is that I was thinking about, like, how her looks were just, just kind of just so, pow, wow. And mostly, like, they were, like, really serving a way to emphasize her body and and how toned it is, and just, like, how extraordinary looking it is, and also, of course, her composure and all that stuff, but, so that gets me thinking about how and we'll get to this, making tasks manageable, about how it's like, okay, so why, and one of the first thoughts I had when I saw like this one picture with her arms raised and she's just like absolutely like an anatomical model of musculature is I thought, oh, this is gonna like launch a lot of disordered relationships with like food and exercise. Like the first thought I had was that. And it's like, and I thought, like, why? Why is that? Why does that happen? And And I think one and you know what I think it is? I think that there's something about admiring something and seeing something admired that in a universe where we do not in a model where we are not like we don't actually inhabit a really deep magnetizing, self-aware, self-known sense of loving ourselves, of our own worth. Something that in Parinama we're working on all the time and emphasizing and growing is like this sense of this of your inherent power and value and adorableness and cherishableness being this quality that is just this passive aspect of yourself that's emanating. And so in a model that's separating us from that and then selling it back to us, I think that the power of seeing somebody being admired and sewing into that one's own admiration of it is that without having our own internal compass, that it's like we're actually like looking outside of ourselves for ways to be worthy of admiration, to be worthy of adoration. Because it's kinda like this thing, it's like, well, if other people like, I can't feel it coming from in me, so if other people are admiring me, if other people are loving me, then I'll be loved. And, so it's like why it's so potent is because it's like it's so potent, like, all of the things like that have to do with marketing about appearance and, like, why those have so much, like, this almost immediate power. 'Cause even being, like, sold the idea, like, this is something that you find attractive, and then you have, people that are like, this is what you're like, what you're supposed to be attracted to. We have a lot of relationships that have a very transactional aspect of, like, wanting to have a spouse that is, part of elevating their status, where it's like, "Oh, wow, what a lucky person to have a beautiful wife." You know, a beautiful slender wife and that's like kind of this like high, it's like, oh, it's going out and seeing people admire you. But it's kind of like, why does it happen so rapidly? Like, why is it seeing something immediately has this effect on so many people? And it has so much to do with the relative, like, strength or the ability to I'm just trying to think of a way to put it. It's like, think of ourselves as, like, a transmitter, like a lighthouse, and it's like, if we don't actively, like, clean the windows, if we don't actively change the light bulbs, if we don't actively make sure that the foundation and the lighthouse is sort of kept up so it's operational, if we don't, then it's kind of like its ability to shine outward and its ability to, like, I guess I'd even say, like, feel itself is impacted. So a lot of, like, the analogy I do here with Parinama is that it's like part of the freedom of this is that stuff doesn't do that to you anymore, because the stronger force is kind of coming, the call is coming from inside the house. The force of just loving yourself, the force of your own worth is being not a intellectual concept, but something that's felt and directly experienced. So when I see, people talking about these concepts, I'm like, okay, that's good. But the other part is like, unless you're actually feeling it, it's just more it's intellectual concepts that can be overridden. It's like volume. It's a volume game. Even the thing with like affirmations, it's like, well, you have to like say the positive things more, like, and repeatedly, like, so it's like the thing is like once we can touch the feeling, there's a way that it transcends like this kind of, it's like a knowing, it's like, "Oh, that's true. That's true." For somebody to say like, "You're worthy, you're worthy, you're worthy," it's like, why doesn't that work? It's like because you can't feel it. It's like going up to that lighthouse and trying, it's like it has to be coming from the inside. And granted, like, a love of another person can be like cleaning off the windows and all this kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, it's like the sense that you know where to find that ability within yourself, and that capacity is really important. It's not the only thing, but it's really an important part of it, is that you have like the sovereign access to understanding like that, like your this aspect of your nature. So yeah, that's a rant. Okay, so switching gears here, I'm going to read from Making Tasks More Manageable. And I'm not going to talk about my own process with this as it's happening, and it has all sorts of interesting nuances with it, which have been, um, I don't know. I feel like it's helpful to talk about like the hard parts of it, because it's like the book like houses this sort of like bouncing ball thing about like, here's what it looks like when it works, I guess, is probably the thing with that. And um and one of the things that goes back to cross currents is I want to point back to adaptations, and and adaptations being like in the case of, like, where we tend to go to in, like, states of, like, feeling fearful or shameful or being overwhelmed by emotion, and so as we get as our practice, as our practice matures in this, that, like, this it becomes, like, significantly more, like, what's the word? It's like I don't know what the right word is for it. It's like manageable, isn't it? It's like it's something kinda bigger than that. But the thing is with this process is the cross currents. I'm finding right now that it's, like, really picking up a lot of wins on cross currents that, like, are kind of surprising me that they're gaining a lot of force, and they're not some of them actually aren't untrue. So that's another thing, which is, like, some limiting beliefs, it's like I mean, one thing that is kind of, like actually, I'll share this. It feels like a little I have to be kinda mindful. 'Cause sometimes when I'm sharing things, it's like I'm like, it's more than it's almost feels like I should say, but, one of, like, my what like, a repeating negative negative emotion for me is, why should I put all the work in to do this when I'm okay and other people are, where I've, like, found my way, I've solved my problem, I've, made my life great, and I'm, like, fine, and this has been, like, existed in a lot of different levels. It's like, why am I breaking my neck to, like, making breaking my back rather, to, like, try to reach people who don't seem to even wanna be reached? That's probably, like, you know, on my tombstone or on my, like, shadow's tombstone is that it's like, why am I making this effort when I don't need to prove anything? I'm actually totally like, I'm good. And it's like, why? Why? And this is, I mean, this is like was a huge thing in writing Parinama, where I was mad a lot of the time because I'm like, look, I had, this like beautiful lifestyle, you know, like this career that, it's sort of like whatever, but like, yeah, no career. I had a really like, like insanely profitable career where, yeah, I'm not gonna get like, yeah, and that I was really good at, lifestyle. I had a yoga practice, like physically, I was like really and I was just so mad because I could feel this crimping and this forcing function of like, do this, like this is the thing you're supposed to do. And I still get mad about it. Yesterday I got really mad about like I had like a morning of just like absolute just sort of dark simmering like I don't even want it's not even like rage. It was just like dark like sort of thing, which is like, why? And I don't know how relatable that is. But I think like I just wanna point to like the thing it's like it's not just like things about yourself, it's like, why? Like, why should I do this? At least for me. It's like there's least yeah, there's that. So, yeah, and true to form, this morning I woke up and, like, immediately got this kind of, like, actually, I'll tell this part, even though it's, like, kind of long-winded. So yesterday, I was, like, really in this kind of, like, state of being, like, feral, like, I felt very feral about this, and so one of the things I did is I went on and into, like and using AI, wrote a song for myself that was like, "It's always darkest before the dawn, and you know this, and it happens every time, and you get like this," and just and the thing was, it really made me like, I really laughed, like, it was really a funny thing because it's something I know, which is that it's like this cycling. I know this and I don't know it. I know it and I don't know it at all, like, every time it's like a new experience, but it's like the thing is, like, how intense the feelings get before a breakthrough, before, like, the sort of, like, next kind of, like, "Here you go," like, next opening, and this has happened in everything I've ever done, and I don't know, I'd be really interested to hear what your experience is with this. But, yeah, so I was like and then, of course, or no yeah, I guess, of course, this morning was, like, immediately, like, boom, 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 and then even yesterday afternoon, there were a bunch of things. So, there's that. Look at this hair. Who can watch this hair? I mean, that's, like, really rude. I really should make an effort. maybe like once for the second round of reading this, it'll get okay. So anyway, so this hub strains under large okay, so this is making tasks manageable, and I'm just gonna blast through this. So this and there's kind of an underpinning here that it'd be worth talking to, which is this hub strains under large, obtuse goals, such as to build a company. In quotes, tasks are like eating a meal in small bites rather than choking on one large gulp. Use the specific, measurable, attainable, relevant to the larger goal, and time-bound, SMART method for goal setting. And once again, we're on page, or maybe for the first time I'm saying this in this reading, we're on page 300. So a seemingly infinite number of tasks and actions will likely be necessary. So you should be clear about what gets done first. If you don't know, get some guidance from a trusted mentor to help break down the work into actionable tasks with prioritization. If you still feel overwhelmed, break your tasks into even smaller units of work that energize you. Energize you is critical in that, okay? So don't try to fight with your willpower. The more you push, the more it pushes back. Work with it by creating achievable, actionable tasks that connect to a sense of satisfaction. Tasks and goals are too big or not interesting to you are a trap in this stage. Break them down into actionable steps that energize and provide a sense of accomplishment. If a task fills you with dread, it's the wrong one and needs to be reimagined. Say you're supposed to research projects comparable to yours, but feel overwhelmed and unclear about how to approach the work. Make your first task simply to compile a list of articles and videos, or to schedule a conversation with someone relevant and make a list of things that you find interesting and pay attention to what will give you energy and use it to create momentum. I caution my teams about starting a day without a plan or having a plan that doesn't energize them. For example, if they have a list of calls to make to contacts, they've tried a million times without success, my guidance would be to create a new list that gets them excited about what's possible. Reposition your tasks so you feel energized by them to build momentum for when you get to the less exciting stuff. Okay, this is actually, I just keep finding this kind of like astonishing how timely this is for my own process. Mm, yeah, I have to really reabsorb that. Yeah, so one of the things there's 2 points I wanna, like, make in terms of underlying aspects of this. One of them is, like, the importance of staying energetically activated, and the myth that your success is just by pushing through shit you don't wanna do, because there is some of that, but there's nuance in this. The pillars of your work are that there are things you're excited about, and if there isn't that quality to what you're doing, you just need to shift your perspective and find new ways to be able to, like, reapproach tasks. If you're like, "Yeah, I don't like reading," like, just and also the thing is shame. This is where shame can really get in the way because shame is like there's this way that you're supposed to be doing things, or it's comparative. It's like other people did this and they didn't have a problem with it, or why is everyone else not having an issue with motivation, or, I'm behind, or I'm, not doing it well. All that kind of stuff is like, one of the things about like doing the work is like, as discussed in previous sections, is like this thing about just doing it without really, um, without, like, this thing about perfection. It's like being like, "This is me showing up," and the thing is doing the work. It's not the actual work. It's like the evidence that I'm giving myself that of my, like, my qualification for doing this is the fact that I can show up for it, and the fact that sometimes, like, what I show up for is, like, work that I'll actually maybe even have to scrap. A lot, like, that there's a lot of that, but the devotion of continuing to show up for something is part of what gets embedded in the final product, is, like, there's a quality to it that is, like, the idea that every like, work's supposed to be linear, that everything you do is supposed to create something that's like, like an end result, where it's like the work itself is this exercise of devotion. So it's like changing the relationship with work, um, to be one of, like, process, of being in a process, and that's why connecting this back to things earlier discussed earlier, is the connection to this is really important. The connection to who you are is discussed in the 5th hub. The connection to this being answers to questions you genuinely ask and are willing to wait to receive the answers for. That type of connection to the meaning and the purpose of this work is really essential for being able to develop a loving devotional relationship with it, which is that you show up for it the best you can every day in whatever way that you can. And and it's, like, also, like, a loving relationship where it's a give and receive, like, give and take. They're just it's like there's an ebb and flow. Sometimes it come you've one day where it's like, "Oh my god," like, you get done what in a, couple hours, like, something that was, like, absolutely, like, months of toiling, and then there's some weeks where you get almost nothing done, but the showing up for creation and, like, manifestation is really this is part of why this is also so transformative, is that it's not just what you create, going back to this notion, it's not just what you create, it's your how you are transformed in the process. So, all right. So I think that's yeah. And the thing is, like, if the work is just there's just it's kinda like, yeah, this is I'm really having a hard time connecting this or feeling activated by it. If there's, like, if and this is why doing the ascending pathway is so important in evaluating and understanding conditionings around shame. If that makes you feel like there's something wrong with you, that's why we wanna do that, like, with that work, and even just use this to really fine tune that there's nothing wrong with you. It's like, if you're like, "I'm not feeling this," and allowing that to be an indicator to explore another approach. And yeah, and I think one of the things is, like, when there isn't a lot of energy, that notion can feel really, tiring. So when it's hard to do something and you're like, "Yeah, I can't do it, and I don't have the thing," and even the shaming around it is going to drain your energy for it, about being like, "I should be able to do this. Why don't I get up every morning and paint?" Or, like, whatever people say to themselves, like, "Why," like, if I was a writer, I'd be scribbling around in a moleskin every day or sketching on the streets, and, like, all this kind of stuff, and it's like, it's just not true. It's like it is what it is, like, and the exercise is tapping in to this process of being able to access these aspects of, like, these deeper questions that we have, and connecting that to our sense of who we are, and being able to draw that into increasing levels of, like, density by finding words for them, by incorporating people to support the process where we do in doing the things, and being parts of it that we don't have, as part of who we are, and then just, like, doing the work for this. And this really is, like, it's super. I don't know if the word is meta for this, but this really is a thing that, your this process of manifestation, I'll just call it manifestation here, is not passive, it's really active and passive. It's pa it's like the difference between, like, the flow state, as discussed earlier, and, like, finding that where, like, resistance lives and exists. So, yeah, I mean, so here, like, okay, so just in summary, The practical guidance here, I mean, I think I just sort of did the sort of weaving the veils around some of the esoteric stuff here. But, one of them, so the practical parts of this, one is setting yourself up to start your day with, or start your work on the project, like, start wherever it is that you begin, like, starting that in a place, like, giving yourself as much of an advantage as possible to be doing something that you're really excited about. I mean, one of the things too about overworking with that, if you're, like, really overworking, is that sometimes if you overwork, if you work too much, you can actually, like, because 'cause you're so excited while you're doing the work, you're like, "Oh my god," and then you kind of, like, exhaust it, so by the time you stop doing the work, you're kinda like, "Oh my god," that it sort of has this feeling of being like, "Yeah, this kinda sucks." Or stopping at a place where you're like, "Yeah, this isn't great." Keeping that as a strategy for being like, "Yeah, let's, like, leave this off so I'm, like, excited to pick back up again." It's hard, that's a discipline. That's kind of easier said than done. But setting, this is the thing, is like setting oneself up so that it's kinda like the thought that just came to me was like baiting the trap, but it's like setting yourself up so there's something that you're excited to do and approach or figure out. That it's not just like, "I don't even know what I'm gonna do," and then you're like, "That's how I'm gonna start my day." It's like when I'm like, like, for real, like, that's actually funny. I laugh because it's like, I find it relatable. Okay, I laugh. Okay, and then the other thing is the making tasks manageable part of, like, the SMART goal. So it's, like, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant to the larger goal, and time bound. This is just, like, the thing is, like, this is where there's really a lot of, like, room for being dynamic, because, like, a lot of, I think, like, shame-bound stuff, and shame keeps coming up in here, this 3rd hub all the way, because this is where there's a lot of, like, the sense of, like, "I'm not doing it right." This is the doing part. It's like, "I'm not doing it right. This is the right way to do it." Is, like, if you're a creator and you're building, it's getting to, like, realize, like, yeah, you are. There was actually, so there's a guy, Brad Hargraves, who I think is a really interesting thinker, and he's worked in, like, education. He's an entrepreneur. Won't get into more that stuff, this much stuff about him, but he's moved around industries. So he built an education company. He's done a lot of stuff with commercial real estate. I don't know, like, he's doing something else. Like, and he wrote, and one of the things he wrote, I read this yesterday, is he said, people, and I relate to this, people think that I've hopped around a lot of industries. It's like, but the advantage to that is that something that is really commonplace in one industry and considered to be just a regular standard for how things are done is really innovative in another. So he's like, in moving, you can just kind of bring, like, the old ideas from another industry and bring it into a new, like, your next industry. And it's like, there you go. And I'd give that the same kind of notion with this, which is, like, in creating tasks and approaches for doing a project, is anything where you're like, I wanna put a stake here in the ground, which is, like, anything where you're thinking, "I'm not doing it right because there's just kind of, like, I don't have what it takes," or, "I'm a procrastinator," or, "I'm a," this and that, and it's like, all anything that is, like, fueling a negative self-narrative is, if anything, it's like, maybe a fair thing is, like, I'm not giving myself the right chance here. Like, I'm not giving, it's like I'm not really setting myself up to be successful here, and so that would be, I think, a fair criticism, like, uh, and that would prompt looking at the challenge from another dimension, to say, like, "Well, what's another way to cut this thing up, this task up? What's another approach on this? What is the end result that I'm trying to create here?" And that really helps to say, like, "Well, I'm doing research to learn about this." It's like, "Well, why do I need to learn about that?" And it's like, if they're like, "Yeah, there's nothing there," it's like, maybe I don't need to learn about that. Maybe like, and one of the easiest ways to really find it is to be like, what is the thing that is, like, lighting me up? Like, where do I get some, and even if it's like, sometimes it's just a little bit of energy. just like a little pinhole where you're just like, yeah, I kind of want to do that. And following that, and that's, very antithetical to a really common narrative because it's like, yeah, you're supposed to, it's like that being too permissive with yourself. Like, it's so mean. It's like these narratives are so shitty because it's just like you wanna talk about, like, keeping someone sort of in gridlock, and also in the book, it's on the page if you're following along, I don't know what page it's on the chapter that's in page 116, which is, like, there's a lot in chapter 6, there's a lot about risk aversion and also this cycle of, like, hyper achievement, the overachievement cycle, which actually isn't about, like, achievement, it's like misnomer, it's actually just about, like, trying to outrun shame. And even the thing about, like, risk aversion, it's like one of the things you're gonna know with, um, achievement is, like, how comfortable are you with doing things differently? How comfortable are you with doing things in a way that um, folks might be like, "Yeah, that doesn't," like, being able to deal with criticism in, like, what you're doing because the sensibility for the work is so deep. The conviction for it is, like, kind of is, like, sort of the call coming from the inside the house thing. That is a great way to, like, sort of assess sort of what's happening as it relates to, like, achievement patterns. Because it's like when the overachievement is about um, just trying to avoid fucking up, avoid embarrassment, avoid validation that it's like, yeah, I'm not the right imposter syndrome. I'm not really, I don't really belong here. So I have to like sort of keep making sure that I keep the hustle up kind of stuff that yeah. That like it's like being able to see that. And so the thing is it's not like catching it and being like gotcha. It's really like catching it and being like compassionate and kind to it. That aspect of yourself is like to catch it and be like, "Oh, I see you. Like you need like you deserve to be kind of like heard and seen and like made to feel safe." Made to feel safe is probably a good one. So, yeah, if you feel so compelled, I don't the specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based, just Google it. It's like, I don't if I my my productivity training was there. And that loops in with, like, setting yourself up just that, like, it's something that you feel like there's at least some sense of activation for. And it doesn't mean it's gonna feel good, and this is something I'm dealing with right now, is that it's like the activation isn't like, "This is gonna be pleasurable." It's like there's just energy coming from it. It's like, "I don't wanna do that." I'm having a "I don't wanna do that" that's, like, growing within tons of, um, heat right now. And, so it's like that's where energy is coming from. It's coming from being like the next step for you to do here is something you don't really wanna do that's outside my comfort zone, but there's just really a sense of like there's just energy and it doesn't yeah, some of the early videos I made, like when I actually would do like a static video on this channel would have that, like was discussing that, which is like knowing how to sort of like follow. And one of the things is like, does it give you energy and does it create clarity? Like, do you feel like all of a sudden it's like, poof, like I can like see, but it's for me, one of the things is it's revoltingly uncomfortable and I know what it is and I keep trying to resist it. And then that's actually kicking up a lot of limiting beliefs and cross currents about like, so it's like resolving things and having to work through them. But that's also a place where progress can die, is that believing like any resistance, and this is discussed earlier, like any resistance represents like sort of the invisible hand of divinity telling you you're not supposed to be doing it. And that's absolutely, like, not it. It's like, this is a very nuanced process of creating and building. It's like there's extraordinary like, a component of extraordinary flow and a component of extraordinary resistance. And the thing that, that's said about resistance is that the greater the resistance, the more important the work. Oh, fuck. Okay, that just hit. Oh, oh, oh my God. Okay. Oh, I'm mad at that. So, yeah, I'm actually like so my thing right now and looping it all together as I, kind of talked about a little bit earlier, which is one of my big hangups is um yeah, I don't like it's kind of like it's this thing that's like it was so, it was like it was so oh, that's interesting. It's like I've already done the work. My and this is like, this is kind of the like lift the rock up and look under it kind of thing, but it's like I've done the work, so why should I be like really putting myself out to make it available to other people? It's like if I just it's like where like in the case of this, there's other examples from earlier in my life. It's like I wrote the book. I wrote the book. If you can't find the book, if you can't read the book, it's like what am I how can I don't know if I can help you. I'm good. It's like I'm good. You know, my life is like free. My life is like just really like nice and actualized and all this kind all the stuff that is like the byproduct of this. So it's like, why am I doing this? So that's one of the things in seeing that, and then also my resistance to not wanting to put myself out there. And I think some of like just talking about my own self here is like the thing with the cross currents. Like one of the things about a cross current that is true is that I don't want to center myself in this. I did like the whole point of the book was that it is something that someone reads and they're finding it inside themselves. So the whole thing to me is that's like, I can't get in the way of this, like, these models of, like, narcissism about, like, gurus and teachers, and, "You should follow me and listen to me." I mean, because even the thing is I'm compelling, I'm intelligent, all this kinda stuff. It's like I'm, like, definitely someone who has a high level of sort of, like, risk for people kind of now instead of doing this thing that's really important, which is, like, lighthousing, it's like finding it inside of yourself is to go, "Oh, I'm gonna listen to her now." It's really bad for me. It's, like, really bad for me. So this isn't so much a thing about it's taking that on is really hard, and it's also just antithetical to, like, ultimately what this is, like, finding that love inside yourself, finding that power inside yourself, finding that capacity to feel in yourself, finding the ability to just feel safe. Like, it's not that you are safe, it's that you feel safe, that you know how to feel safe. It's not that this thing isn't like, how do you create safety? It's how do you know how to feel safe? That's just a side rant. Um, but so that's kind of one of my resistances, which is this thing about like right now, which is not wanting to put myself out there and having this kind of combination of things where there is a lot of logic to it that does make sense, but there's also a cross current in there. So it's sort of like this back to like very early parinama like visualization, which is like the thing about the like the iridescence, like it's like being able to separate some of that and actually make sense of it. Yeah, I mean, because part of it too, actually, now that I'm just speaking freely on this, is that I don't want to have to make concessions about myself in my own that would affect my own process and my own practice and my own existence that, make concessions to make people more comfortable, and that's something that is like a point of resistance for me. So, yeah, I mean, I talk about the kind of underbelly stuff here because I do like, once again, I do think it's kind of like the book is like, this is how it looks when it works, and I'm talking about, like, this is what's actually happening when it's working. So, I don't know how relatable anything that I'm experiencing is, I'd love to hear this is where it's like this medium is so challenging is I'd love to hear yeah, I'd love this to be a discussion, you know? I'd love for this to be a discussion. But yeah, so I guess me and my Miley Cyrus hair are wrapping it up now. God, I really, I've gotta say, I really recommend doing this. I really recommend doing this to, like there's something, something that is, like, in talking this through and reading these and then talking about what comes up that it's like it's just occurred to me, which is kind of wild. It's just occurred to me that this is really similar to journaling. It's just occurred to me that this is very similar to journaling. So the original intent over, like a little over a year ago when I started doing these was that I'm like, I'm going to read the book and I'm going to actually provide color commentary. Um, but what I am experiencing right now is like talking through it is like really like has a lot to do with like revealing parts of it that I need to understand to kind of continue to develop my own practice. So yeah, thanks. Thank you to thank you. Yeah, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. Yeah, I thought this was gonna be a really short one, but yeah, it wasn't. I thought this was gonna be a short one, and we really got into it. So, yeah. Okay. So, the next readings that are coming up in this section are planning and follow through, accountability, handling obstacles and distractions, and delegating. Yeah, I think, it's like the crossover, the follow like the folding into the how this as the 3rd hub relates to the 3rd hub and the qualities of the 3rd hub and the ascending pathway that have to do with dealing with senses of, like of your power, being able to access your power. And this has to do with we'll talk about like horsepower and like the size of your engine. And then in the 2nd hub, it's like the fuel. It's like kind of the like this kind of quality of like how this like kind of fluidity of like desire and want and connecting that with things that other people want and and find it yeah, like and finding that, like finding the desire and the feeling and the emotion in yourself and connecting that to what's meaningful and others feel. But right now in the 3rd hub, this is literally about your power. And if you can't access your power, it's a good time to go back to chapter 6 and get into that exploration of being able to really unveil and reveal your relationship with the I think the opener in this chapter is really the Alice Walker quote is the most common way people give up their powers by thinking they don't have any. It's one of the more sort of important notions in the book. I mean, I don't know, there's so many important notions in the book, and I think that but and one final thing I'll say as far as understanding now more about what Parinama method is and what this is that I can't explain what it is. I can't if I were to draw up a diagram and say, "This is what this is. These are the principles." I mean, I did a little bit of that with the tangle, the hairball. It's not in the book. That came up after, but as part of Parinama for Beginners. But this is something more about spending time with yourself and I don't even wanna call it reacquainting. It's just something it's too it's I can't it's beyond my capacity to, like, explain, like, what it is as far as, like, here's the tenets of this. It's like, spend time in it. Spend time with it every day. And it will reveal itself to you, and by it, I mean, like, you will reveal yourself to you, and it's like the difficulty of it, and the pain of it, and the discomfort of the seeing things, and working through it. It's like that's the kind of, like, the the bud sort of like opening, kind of thing. And it like it's such a like kind of like whatever, but it's just spending this time in this revelation of what you truly are and coming back to it every day in a way that is like represents devotion, and coming back when it's hard, coming back when it's easy, coming back to the best of your ability. It's not a lot. Like even that's some of the things discussed in this, which has to do with like making things manageable. I mean, I guess making tasks manageable could be applied to doing having a parinama practice, which is like, how do you do this? I mean, this book is like, I had somebody on a video yesterday opening it up and they were like, oh, like when they like, and they were, it just made like they were holding the book up on their like unboxing video, and it made them literally look like they were like a little figure holding the book up. Because I was like, oh wow, I could like it was like a scale, like putting a quarter on next to a map, kind of or whatever. Um, it's just so massive. Like it's so massive, and I guess like a sort of a meta thing here, talking about like creating and building, like in this context, but just in parinama, is that it's so massive that this thing is like, it's of just being like, whoa, I'm supposed to finish this. I'm supposed to read this textbook. It's like, oh, like, whoa, like, so it's already being faced with this thing that you can't, it's like, that just feels like you couldn't do it. Like, I felt like this with Eastern Body, Western Mind, which is it gave me those feelings, like where I was like, "Oh my god." And it took me a really long time to read that book, which is like, the like an informing text for Parinama. That and then I wanted like I read it and it took a really long time, and I remember feeling really weird about that. God, I didn't remember that. I felt really weird, like, wow, I'm having such a response to this, and it's, like, changing me, and it's really transforming me. So why am I not reading it more? Like, why is it so hard for me? Shouldn't this be easy? Shouldn't I just be able to, like, blast through this? Because it's like, and it was just, like, bit by bit by bit, and it would be like, like, every time I got through every reading, and then there were times where I just couldn't, where just it's like that where you're just like, I feel like a little too I feel too delicate, or like I don't have the energy for it, and it's just not. And so I think, that's a place to just be like, yeah, that's really okay. Like when that's happening, that's part of practicing, is like in the days where it's like, if that's part of practicing on the days where it's like a real conscious decision to be like, get to like understand yourself and just be like, yeah, this isn't it today. This isn't it. And it's because this is what I need today, is not that. So that's enough of an answer. That's like no is a complete sentence kind of thing. So yeah, like so applies to parinama, and it's just reading one section, like in these videos. It's just reading a single section, and there's kind of a quality where just it kind of works on you without having to like do a ton of work on it. So this really, I guess, is like a sort of a thing for, notion for devotion, is that just by showing up, that action in and of itself, and this, I'm going to go full circle to creating and building, just that action in and of itself is transformative, is to keep showing up even when it's like you're at like, the thing where people say like, sometimes you gave 10%, but that was your 100% for the day kind of thing. So anything, it's like, so it is kind of a weird thing where this book can make people all of a sudden instantly feel dwarfed by it. Like where they're like, oh my God, because the person was saying like, I just had known this was something I really like needed and wanted to be part of my practice. And it's a, like very like, kind of like, wow, like I get it, but it's also like still continues to be a wow thing. And then seeing their reaction to it, and in their like sort of a real time kind of thing, is like to understand that. And I mean, it's literally probably the discussion that I have with every single person that has to do with this book, is that they're like, is something about how overwhelming it is. Everyone, in one way or another, there's a discussion about how overwhelming this is, but this is a book that's literally, like, contains in it a path to liberation and actualization, and in that, it's like it's kind of it really, I mean, my dream, my aspiration is it's your path, and that in reading it with yourself, that it's like you're finding it and even exploring it, even listening to, like, me read it with my, you know, chat up on it, like, that it's like the thing is, like, that it's bringing, the goal would be that it's, like, bringing you into feeling more into the experience of what it means for you to be alive and what that feeling is. Instead of carrying around, like, a patterning that is, like, really, like, that's original intention in its creation is to make us feel safe, make us adapt so that we can, sort of make our way through early life and in the society and in the construct that we're born into. It's like, so all of that is sort of, that, it's kind of like a mold in a way, and it's like we're kind of breaking out of the mold, I guess, so to speak. We're finding that the quality of our material is like actually takes on its own shape. Um, it has its own shape that it wants to be. Just when sort of, yeah, that's probably like a bit more dynamic, but whatever. This analogy is taking flight and going off. So yeah, this would be a good class to teach, just as an interactive process of talking with people. Because one of the other things I will say is that in this format, I'm talking like directly out of like me. And one of the things about like a really great, like interactive, like aspect of this is it actually can be more dynamic and shifts into making more sense for folks who are participating. So, all right. So next reading coming up, coming in hot, likely tomorrow. So thank you. And yeah. Yep. And so any comments or questions are always welcome. I'm very interested in like points of dissension. If you think of something I'm saying is like I've learned a lot from people coming back to me and saying, yeah, there's kind of a different move or perspective to look at on this that like expands my own consciousness around a matter, and also like expands it more, like reveals like the limitation of my perspective, because that's another thing. This is like everything I'm saying is limited by like my vantage point, which is a singular vantage point relative to many others, billions, 8 billion others. But any comments, if you don't want to put a public, I haven't said this in a while, if you don't want to put a public comment here on YouTube, you can go to the Parinama Method on Instagram and private message me. And let's see. Yeah, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye.